This evening, we would like to look at the witness of Yissaskar. Now, firstly, we will look at the prophetic destiny that was given by Jacob when he blessed his children near the end of his life. And as such, we will turn to the book of Bereshith, Bereshith chapter 49. The word here says, and Jacob called his sons and said, gather together so that I declare to you what is to befall you in the last days. So you could see the prophetic element here. He's going to reveal to them that which is going to befall them. Their destiny is unfolding as he speaks to them. Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my power, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of exaltation, and the excellency of power. So he begins here to give praise, esteem his son, knowing that he's the firstborn, knowing that he's eligible not only for the priesthood, but also for the birthright. So he's going to get a double portion of the blessing. But in the next verse, he says, unstable as the waters, you do not excel because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my coach. Now, you can understand the tension here in this family, the house of Jacob. Because the sin here committed is that Reuben has slept with his brother's mother, his father's concubine. And that has sent a stench throughout all of Israel. And clearly, Jacob here had not forgotten what had taken place, and now he's blessing them, but he's reminding his son what had transpired years ago. So in the blessing, he gave the birthright to Joseph, and he gave the scepter unto Judah. And so we see that here, that Reuben did not excel. No judges, no priest from the Reubenites because of what he had done. So we see that Jacob here, as a father, is making it known that he doesn't trust his son here who has let the family down. He doesn't trust him because his conduct is not good at all. He has embarrassed the family. But if you come with me to verse 13, regarding Zebulun and Yissaskar, he says, Zebulun dwells at the seashore. He is a haven for ships, and his border is unto Sidon. Yissaskar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. And he saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant, and he inclined his shoulders to bear a burden, and because a subject to slave labor. So you see here that Jacob is saying Yissaskar is a hard worker. He puts his shoulders to the wheel. That's the kind of man that he is. And as the years unfold, you will see that of him, the character that Yissaskar is. Interestingly, when we read the book of Chronicles, chapter 12, and if we read verse 32, we also see that, and the children of Yissaskar, who had understanding of the times to know what Yisrael should do, their chiefs were 200, and all their brothers were at their command. Now, what we're understanding here is a time when David was to be crowned king. The house of Saul had dwindled, had become smaller, while David had increased in numbers. And so all the people had come to anoint, to crown David as king. Let's read a few verses in the commencement of the portion here, chapter 12. Now, these are they who came to David at Ziklag while he was still in hiding from Shaul, son of Kish. And they were among the mighty men helping the battle, armed with bows, using both the right hand and the left, with stones and with arrows, with bows of the brothers of Shaul of Benjamin. The chief was Ahijah and Joash, the sons of Shimea, the Gibbethite, and Yazawel, and Pelet, the sons of Asmaweth, and Barakan, and Yahu, the Anathothite, and Yishmaiah, the Gibeonite, a mighty man among the 30, and over the 30, and Yemiah, and Yahaziel, and Yehonan, and Yozobad, the Gederite. And so these people had come to crown David as king, to make him king overall. But in the midst of this, all the tribes had arrived here to make David king, and it is clear here, it is said that all of these people paid respect to the children of Yissaskar because they knew they were sagacious and they were erudite. They were bright people. They were living at a time when they knew how to respond to the circumstances that were happening to them, and we could learn something from that even as we wait the Messiah. And so we can take this typology here and transfer the principles of that to our time. A king was in the making, King David. And King David, as you know, is a type of Yeshua, because when Yeshua comes, he's going to raise up David's tabernacle. So we need to learn something from this, because Shaul wrote, the apostle, that these things were written for our admonition. And so a king is in the making. you need to know how to prepare yourself and to respond to the king that is coming. That's what the Yissaskar children were like. They knew, and everybody relied on them for advice. So Moses, in chapter 33 of Deuteronomy, also did an assessment or a blessing on the children of Israel, not too dissimilar from what Jacob had done. And in verse 18 of chapter 33 of Deuteronomy, he says, and of Zebulun he said, rejoice, Zebulun, in thy going out, and Issachar in thy tents. Rejoice, Zebulun. Why? Because Issachar is in your tent. Issachar is living in your house. So when you have someone like Issachar who knows how to interpret the prophecies and understand the things that are happening, rejoice. If you have an assembly, a place where the gift of prophecy exists and the people can understand them and explain them to the people, rejoice, because the children of Issachar is living in your house. And you notice something here, that the children of Israel that were of the same mother, they had a different bond that was different from those who had different mothers. Like, for example, we have Joseph and we have Benjamin, who are the sons of Rachel. They had a special bonding, whereas the 6 sons of Leah, they had a special bonding. And of course, with the 2 handmaids, that women who became, I suppose you could say, Jacob's second wives. Let's give them that status. Their children were different. They had different bonding, and some of them did not like Joseph because Joseph obviously was well loved by Jacob, and they knew that. And that's one of the reasons why they eventually sold him. So that household was not all peace and tranquility at all. But out of that experience, we have this group of people who were wise, and they expressed their wisdom quite sagely, and the rest of the people relied on them for advice. And so tonight we want to look at the witness of Yissaskar. And I'm going to read this from the Hallelujah Scriptures. Now, for most edition of the Bibles, you won't find it in there, but it's in this. The witness or the witnesses of the 12 tribes. And I want to dilate upon the witness of Yissaskar. And so the word says, the copy of the words of Issachar, for he called his sons and said to them, listen, my sons, to Yissaskar your father, give ear to the words of he who is beloved of Yahweh. I was born the fifth son of Jacob by way of ire for love apples. He's talking to his sons, and he's telling them that his birth was a consequence of the exchange of mandrakes, the King James says. Here he says, love apples in the Hallelujah scriptures. For Reuben, my brother, brought in love apples from the field, and Rachel met him and took them, and Reuben went. He wept, and at his voice, Leah, my mother, came forward. So when Leah took the apples, or should I say, when Rachel took the apples from Reuben, he wept, and obviously his mother heard and came out. Now, these were sweet-smelling apples which were produced in the land of Aaron below a valley of water. Now, Haran is a place that you know Abraham, when he left Ur of the Chaldeans, he rested for a while until his father died. Then he went to the land of Canaan. So that's where these apples grew. And Rachel, or Rahel, said, I do not give them to you, but they shall be to me instead of children. At this time, she's yearning, Rachel, to have children, but she was barren and could not have any. For Yahweh has despised me, and I have not borne children to Jacob. Now there were two apples, and Leah said to Rachel, does it not satisfy you that you have taken my husband, that you take these also? So you could see there is tension in the household. The two sisters are quarreling over one man. And Rahel said to her, you shall have Jacob this night for the love apples of your son. No, Jacob doesn't know anything about this, but the two women are bargaining with apples for his ire. Poor Jacob. And Leah said to her, Jacob is mine, for I am the wife of his youth. Understand that. I am the wife of his youth, and it was by trickery that you got him. And she goes on to explain, but Rahel said, do not boast, and do not flaunt yourself, for he married me before you. And for my sake, he served our father 14 years. Rachel is saying, Jacob married me before he married you. Now, if you're reading this with naked eye, you would not understand what Rachel is saying. In the Hebrew context, when you're engaged to someone, it's a binding covenant, which is what Yeshua was addressing in Matthew chapter 5 and also Matthew 19, when he's saying that if you marry such a woman without giving her a certificate of divorce, then you leave the one person eligible or prone to adultery. And that's what she's saying. I was long engaged to him, but it was by trickery one night. My father deceived me, and you were able to marry him. And had not deceit increased on the earth, and the wickedness of men prospered, you would not now see the face of Jacob, for you are not his wife. Now that's interesting. For this cause must a man leave his mother and father and be joined to the wife of his youth. And Rachel is claiming that status, which is being challenged by her sister, Leah. For you're not his wife, but were taken to him in my place in the seat. And my father deceived me and removed me on that night and did not allow Jacob to see me, for if I had been there, this would not have befallen him. Nevertheless, for the love apples, I am hiring Jacob to you for one night. And Jacob knew Leah, and she conceived and bore me, and I was called Yissaskar because of the ire. It seemed like Jacob had no say in this. Then a messenger of Yahweh appeared to Jacob, saying, Rachel shall bear 2 children, though she has refused company with her husband. That means it's almost as if we're reading here that there was conflict between Rachel and Jacob at this particular time. It says she had refused company with her husband and had chosen abstinence. And had not Leah, my mother, paid the 2 apples for the sake of his company, she would have borne 8 sons. Leah would have borne 8 sons. For this reason she bore 6, and Rachel bore 2, for because of the love apples Yahweh visited her. For he knew that for the sake of the children she desired to lie with Jacob, and not for lust of pleasure. She wasn't lusting. She genuinely wanted children. That's what the word here is saying. For also on the next day she again gave up Jacob. Therefore, because of the love apples, Yahweh listened to Rachel, for though she desired them, she did not eat them, but offered them in the house of Yahweh, presenting them to the Kohen of the Most High, who was at that time. She gave them as a gift. And this makes us look at Rachel in a different light. She understood what was taking place here, and rather than have these love apples, these agape apples, she presenting them to the priest, the Kohen, as a gift. Therefore, my sons, when I grew up, I walked in uprightness. This is Yissaskar. We said we want to look at this subject tonight because this man, as I indicated earlier, he was sagacious, erudite, bright, and in all his ways, he acted sagely, and others relied upon him. That's the kind of character here we're dealing with. Yissaskar. It says, and my father baraked me, blessed me, for he saw that I walked in integrity before him. How many fathers we know can say that of their sons or of their children? I walked in integrity, and I was not a meddler in my doings, nor envious and malicious against my neighbor. I never slandered anyone, nor did I condemn the life of any man, walking as I did it in sincerity of eye. That's Yissaskar. Therefore, when I was 35 years old, I took for myself a wife, for my labor were away my strength, they wore my strength away, and I never thought upon pleasure with women, but owing to my toil, sleep overcame me. And my father always rejoiced in my integrity because I offered all my fruits to Yahweh through the Cohen, then my father also. Notice what he did. He offered his first fruits. So we need to understand something here. We can see that these men kept the feast of first fruits. They kept it. These are not Gentiles. And these were men who understood the times and the season. He brought his first fruits. And so this is the objective of all believers, to bring their first fruits, whatever that may look like in today's age. You bring your first fruit and you keep the feast of first fruits. And Yahweh increased his bounties in my hands 10,000-fold. That's wealth. And Jacob, my father, also knew that Elohim aided my sincerity, for on all the poor and oppressed I bestowed the goods of the earth in the sincerity of my heart. Now, you don't meet many men like Yissaskar. As a young man, he had integrity and he walked uprightly. This was a kind of original Job. His father was pleased with him. He knew how he came into the world, almost accidental. And there were not conflict and dissension between two sisters over one man, perhaps he would not have been here. But then you know how Yah works. Those things that look to us as if they're accidents, they're carefully planned by Yah. And so we are seeing the character of a man who not only walked in integrity, and not only one who was blessed by his father and indeed by Yahweh, but he is trying to pass on this oral tradition to his children. He's telling them how to walk. Train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart. It says Proverbs 22, verse 6. And so it is a duty, because if we do not do that to our children, Yah will hold us responsible for that action or inaction. And so I'm in chapter 4 now of the witness of Yissaskar. And now listen to me, my sons, and walk in sincerity of your heart, for I have seen in it all that is well pleasing to Yahweh. He said, if you walk in sincerity, in integrity, don't go to the left or to the right, and don't follow bad company. Just walk according to the established word of Yah, reduced here in print. Because this is the mind of Yah, and his word will not return unto him void. So we got to understand these things and teach these things to our children, particularly in the last days, so they will have understanding and become as sagacious and erudite, even as this young man was. The sincere man does not covet gold. Hear me. You can tell he never lived in America, The sincere man does not covet gold, nor does he take advantage of his neighbor. He does not long for great delicacies. He does not delight in mixed garments. Yissaskar does not wear garments, silk and wool mixed together, terraline and rayon mixed together. He doesn't do that. And in this age, many of us would consider that petty. But he's telling you, I never went to the store and buy any garments that was mixed. If it's linen, it was pure linen. If it was wool, it was pure wool. If it was cotton, it was pure cotton. I don't wear mixed garments. That's Yissaskar. And so these things were written aforetime, but for our admonition. He does not desire to live a long life, but only waits for the desire of Elohim, and the spirits of deceit have no power against him. He was not easily deceived. For he does not look on the loveliness of women, lest he should defile his heart with corruption. There is no envy in his thoughts. No malicious person makes his being to pine away, nor worry with insatiable desire in his heart. For he walks in sincerity of being and observes all matters in uprightness. He was objective. That's what he's saying. Rejecting evil eyes through the error of the world, lest he should see the perversion of any of the command of Yahweh. Therefore, my sons, guard the law of Elohim and obtain sincerity and walk trustworthiness, not meddling with the business of your neighbor. But love Yahweh and your neighbor. Have compassion on the poor and weak. Bow down your back to work the soil, and toil in labors in all manner of farming, offering gifts to Yahweh with thanksgiving. For Yahweh shall barak you with the first fruit of the earth, even as he barak all the Kodashim for Abel, even now. Now understand what he's saying here. He's taking us back to Genesis chapter 4. Let me read it again for emphasis. He says, for Yahweh shall barak you, he will bless you with the first fruits of the earth, even as he barak all the Kodashim from Abel, that's Abel, the King James says, even until now. Remember in Genesis chapter 4, in Bereshith chapter 4, we're made to understand that the two brothers there, Cain and Abel, they took offerings to Yah. And Cain's offering was not accepted. But then the word says, and Abel took also his first fruits. What is he saying? He's saying that when a man works, the first portion of it, I don't care who you are, belongs to Yah, because he's the ultimate landlord. Bring your first fruit to him. And when you look in the society that we live, people just work and they get their wealth and they don't return a portion of it to Yah. They accept the blessing. He baraks them, but it has not yet entered into the precinct of their minds. that they ought to return something back to him, even as Issachar is reminding us that even Abel brought a first fruit. So people pile up their monies in banks, CDs, offshore account, and they forget the one who has given it to them. Can a man rob Yah? Surely. How do they rob, says Malachi? In tithes and in offering. So the man who has been made filthily rich, let's look at him. Yah has blessed him in resources, in health, and in other aspects of life. But he has no time to spend with Yah. He robs Yah of the Sabbath, even though he has been given 6 days of his own to do all that he wants to do. But on the Sabbath day, he goes shopping, gaming. He goes to the movies. He goes to the dance. Contrary to the word of the one who has blessed him with his resort. What do you say to a man, to a person like that who is in rebellion against Yah? What then is his destiny? He shall not excel, ultimately, even as Reuben. But not Issachar. Issachar is well blessed. Chapter 5, verse 6. For our father Jacob barak me with berkat of the earth and of first fruit, and Levi and Yehudah were esteemed by Yahweh even among the sons of Jacob. For Yahweh gave them an inheritance, and to Levi he gave the kahuna, and to Yehudah the reign. He gave him the scepter. And therefore obey them and walk in the sincerity of your father, for to Gad it had been given to destroy the armies that are coming upon Israel. That's for Gad. So the weakness here of Issachar is teaching us how to live, particularly in the last day. He's letting you know that the way he lived as a young man was not lustfully. He saw attractive women, but he was so engrossed in hard labor, and his relationship with Yahweh was such that he didn't idle his time away. He remembered the gifts that Yah had given him and the gratitude that he had shown through returning his first fruit. And later on, at 35 years old, he took a wife for himself. Now, that's quite noble. You don't find that in the culture that we live. Kids today, they are mating at very early age. And sometimes they're doing so with the approval of their parents. Not so. Chapter 7. Look, therefore, as you see, I am 126 years old, and I'm not conscious of committing any sin. Wow. Let me read that again. He said, look, He's speaking to us in that mode. Take a look at me. I am 126 years old and am not conscious of committing any sin. Is there an Yishika among us? That's some statement. He said, except for my wife, I have not known any woman. I never committed whoring by the uplifting of my eyes. What a testimony. Every husband should be able to say, as for my wife, I have never slept with another woman, without getting a cross look from the wife. Every woman should be able to hear that. And every man should be able to hear that from his wife. But we live in a culture where sex and intimacy has become the culture, has become the coin, the currency that we do transaction with. Not this man here. I did not drink wine to be led astray by it. I did not covet any desirable matter that was my neighbor's. Deceit has not risen in my heart. A lie has not passed through my lips. We would like him to visit America. If any man was in distress, I joined my sighs with him, and I shared my bread with the poor. I worked righteousness all my days. I guarded truth. I love Yahweh. Likewise, also, every man with all my heart, you also do these matters, my son, and every spirit of Belial shall flee from you, and no active wicked man shall rule over you, and you shall subdue every wild beast, since you have the Elohim of the Shemaim and earth with you. Walk with men in sincerity of heart. And having said these words, he commanded his sons that they should carry him up to Hebron and bury him there in the cave with his fathers. And he stretched out his legs, and he died a good old age, with every limb sound, and with strength not diminished. He slept with the eternal sleep. Wow. What a man. But they have robbed us of this book. They have taken it out of the Bible, the King James. They've taken it out. So they have robbed us of these precious gifts. So tonight, we just want to remind ourselves that we have to distinguish ourselves from the enterprise that is being offered by this world and choose righteousness. We've got to do that and live a righteous life like Yishika, a man who lived uprightly. He said, even in my dressing, I never wore any mixed garments. In Leviticus 19, verse 19, Yah says, guard my laws. Do not let your livestock mate with another kind. Do not sow your field with mixed seed, and do not put a garment woven with two sorts or thread upon you. How many people have ignored that? You go to the shop and you see a nice suit or you see a nice dress and it says 90% silk and 10% cotton, and it doesn't even matter to you. You buy it because it looks good, and all you're doing is glorify yourself. Yes, don't do it. So may I encourage you to go through your wardrobe. And you might think, well, that's being legalistic. No, I call it obedience. Don't do it. Don't do it. The ninth son here of Jacob is letting you know, this is how I lived. This is how I lived. Deuteronomy 22:11. Do not put on a garment of a different kind of wool and linen together. That's Deuteronomy 22 and verse 11. Here again, we're seeing, don't let your garment, don't let your clothes be of mixed garment. Don't do it if you're going to live right. Now, this is foreign news to the society in which we live. People go to the supermarket and they buy grapes, they buy watermelon, they buy fruits in general without seeds. Whereas in Genesis 1:29, Yah said, don't do that. I have made for you fruits with seeds. So if you go there and you see fruits without seed, you know man has tampered with it. But people don't think of being obedient to Yah. They just do as they please. And the word of Yah says, in vain do they worship me. Yissaskar says, except for my wife, no woman can say I have been with them. That's a statement. That is a statement of intent, more than intent. That's reality. And the word wants us to know that that's one of the reasons that his brethren, his brothers, came to him for advice, because he was upright in all the things that he did. He was a man of integrity. His character stood still, and that's his resume. And so we ought to emulate that kind of behavior, particularly in this last day. It doesn't matter where we live. So as we bring this thing to a close, that's the kind of inheritance we want to leave for our children. Not just money, because they'll squander that. And perhaps you've worked hard for the money that you've left for them, for the inheritance you've left to them, and they just squander that and ultimately end up being lost. But if you could leave an inheritance like this for your children, like Yissaskar, that leads to eternal life. Because we must now prepare ourselves to step out of time and into eternity. That's the whole objective of our being and the years that have been allocated to us. So that's my encouragement this night in terms of this experience shared here. Yah's mind reduced to words, sent to us by this son, the ninth son here of Jacob, Yissaskar. The word says that they knew, the children of Yissaskar, how to conduct themselves in this time when the king is about to come. In Yeshua's name, for such I pray. Amen.